Hello, welcome to Revolver's Fan First podcast, where we explore each artist's history as a fan because every single artist was a fan first. So today we have the mighty, the notorious, the dangerous Lzzy Hale of Halestorm. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And can you please do that same intro every time I walk into the grocery store, like when I'm getting up in the morning?
I figured that was the case. I figured someone was doing it. It's important.
Pretty great.
Yeah. So your history as a fan, I think, so from conversations I've had and some digging and stuff, you grew up in rural Pennsylvania, correct? Is that Amish country?
It's very close. We had a lot of Mennonite neighbors, so it was like Mennonite, and I say this in a very endearing term, redneck, and more cows than people. I spent most of my young adult life on a 20-acre farm where we had sheep and chickens and donkeys and horses, and I was riding a tractor before I ever rode a tour bus.
So didn't embrace Dolly Parton and didn't go down the country track.
No, for whatever reason.
You had rock and roll parents though. They were playing you Van Halen when you were a kid, the Jefferson Airplane. So tell me about what an impact did your parents have on your kind of connection with rock and roll culture?
Oh, from a very early age, music was always a part of our family. Even before I started actually like grabbing onto it like it could be my thing, it was just kind of something that happened. My dad was in a couple different bands throughout the 80s and late 80s and early 90s, and he was in bands in the 70s too. It was nobody that you've ever heard of, and honestly I've listened to some of the tapes. It wasn't gonna happen, Dad. Which he does blame on the drugs. He said he did tell us both when we were young, like, don't do drugs, but if you're going to do drugs, make sure that your entire band does the same drug, because he believes that was his downfall. Someone was on uppers, downers, again, the opposite of straight edge.
Align your drug use. Good fatherly advice.
My mom and dad were both huge fans of the Beatles. So one of my earliest I guess sparks that happened was our childhood videos and movies. We had A Hard Day's Night, we had Help, we were listening to all the early Beatles. That was kind of the foundation. And then absolutely, my parents' song was Panama by Van Halen for whatever reason, and then my dad introduced me to Alice Cooper and Ronnie James Dio, and at an early age I was really into Alice Cooper and Ronnie when I was like 11 and 12. And that was the year I found out I was not cool with the other girls in my grade because they looked at me like I was an alien.
I was going to say, this was a solo effort?
Yes. It's interesting.
Yeah.
When you like something, you grab onto it and you want to show it to people because you're like, this is cool, and so that was the year I realized, like, oh wait, because this is around. So when I was 11, 12, this was around 96, going into 97, and so it was the year that there was like TLC and Mariah Carey was on Bedroom Walls and all of that stuff, and I was totally not just aware of any of that going on, in rural Pennsylvania. So yeah, it's that was a monumental year. But it's interesting because my dad, I remember doing that at a slumber party at one point. It's like I brought my CDs and nope, I don't think we made it past the first chorus of of any of the songs that I liked. And I remember my dad telling me afterward, he's like, that's good, and when of course, you're a teenager, you're like, my life is over, like no one's going to be friends with me, like I'm weird. And my dad always, my parents both encouraged me. They're like, no, own your weird. You like the kind of music you like just because you like it. It's not because it's trendy. It's not because your friends told you should like it. It's not because it's on the radio. It's because you love it. So always hold on to that. Now I can trace that back, now that I'm in my 30s, trace it, up to now. That's become my mission statement. Now this is something I talk about a lot to our fans, and I bet we have to own ourselves and own our weird and be different and celebrate that. So it's interesting how we look back at that arc and be like, well, I guess I'm glad I went to the slumber party.
Well, it's good, those moments where you kind of forced to claim who you are. And okay, well, I'm curious. So was it your dad who found you this stuff? Like, because that wasn't like on the radio and stuff. How did you actually? Was it magazines or was it like, like?
a lot of records. It was a lot of vinyl, and my dad would be digging stuff out. And then my mom had this friendly little competition with my dad because once she started realizing that I was getting into Alice Cooper and Ronnie James Dio and Judas Priest and Deep Purple and all of that, she's like, wait a minute, you got to know that girls can do this too. So she went out and she bought me, this is, I forget when this was, maybe for my birthday, Christmas, something, but it was the greatest hits by Janis Joplin, the greatest hits by Joan Jett. There was a live CD from Heart that they did in the 90s called The Road Home that blew my mind, and I would not be the singer that I am today without that particular CD. But yeah, and it's like Pat Benatar, all of that, just like, hey, if you're gonna be into it, chicks can do that too. And so that blew my mind because the whole time that because I was interested in singing, I was singing in choir when I was a kid and all that stuff. But when I would try to sing the way I want to sing, like Ronnie James Dio or somebody, or Tom Kiefer from Cinderella or something, I'd be imitating. And so it was interesting to hear these women that had these tough vocals that still had this soul to them. And it was this strange thing because I'm like, well, I remember thinking that, and it's so dumb now, but I remember thinking, well, they're girls, and so am I. So, yeah, this is going to be great. It's like it just made the dream a little less impossible.
Well, there's a theory that one of the big problems is that you have to see it to believe it. So it's a big difference. It's a big deal to see someone who looks like you or sounds like you on a stage to make it meaningful and to make it, and it means a lot, I think, to all of us, because it's like, if you're a rock and roll fan, you get to your 30s, you're like, I've been spending 20 years singing along to dudes. You sing along to a lot of dudes. Like that's just the reality of it. So it's always cool, and especially taking, being aggressive and being, the multifaceted creatures that we are, like whether it's aggressive in any way, sexually aggressive, just taking your, like being awesome. Like, I'm like, I want to listen to some heavy metal done by women about being awesome, and just, there needs to be more.
Dude, I talk about this all the time. Women in music, there are so many, I talk about this a lot. It's like, you have no idea how many different versions of me are inside of me, because I can go from, singing Judas Priest to some Whitney Houston, because why not? Because it's all about how you feel and what the song means to you. And what you said earlier is really important, because I remember I've actually had this conversation with Amy Lee and Taylor Momsen and Maria Brink and Ash Costello and my peers in this business. And it's so important for us as women, now that we've made it to a certain point where people, for better or worse, are listening, because believe me, we're not therapists, we're not doctors, don't take everything we do seriously. But I think it's really important for us to represent, ourselves as women and everything that we are, because when we stand on stage, there is those moments. Those moments have happened where a 15-year-old girl is in the audience and she's like, oh, wait, she's doing that. Well, so can I, because it's a different thing. It's such a different epiphany, when there is that you can see yourself in somebody.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It sounds like it's coming from a place, and there's certain things that only we can rage about. That we have our own set of rage, which is important in rock and roll. It's an important part of rock and roll. And were you an angry kid?
I had a lot of feelings. I was not outwardly angry. I was a good kid. I kind of hid within myself. I call myself a reformed introvert, because when we first started playing and going out and meeting people, I was scared to death. I was like this on stage. I couldn't look at anybody. And I would just kind of be like looking at my hands and didn't know what to do about it. And so I credit being in this band and having that outlet to force myself to be the best person that I can be. I am, the person that I am because I had to go through all of that. But it is funny because my dad, when I first started writing songs, my mom and dad got me this Tascam 4-track cassette recorder, right? So you could only do 4 tracks at a time, and then you had to like flip it over. Very old school. I still have it. But but I would be writing these songs in my room, and my dad would knock on the door. He's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Well, I am now." It was a huge emotional outlet. I'm very thankful to have had that as a teenager, because you're filled with all sorts of confusing feelings, and whether that's because you don't belong or because you don't really know where you fit in, maybe you like certain things that other people don't. You don't really know how to describe that. So it was, my outlet was just writing these silly songs, and it got a little loud, and we had to move it into my dad's garage in the bar. So my dad cleared out a small space in the garage so I could actually make some loud noise and say some things that maybe you don't want mom to hear.
How old were you at that point? Had you already played a show? Or?
When did he get me that? That was around 12. So
wow.
Yeah, and then we started the band Halestorm when I was 13.
Yeah. You're coming up to a 24-year anniversary in August.
Oh yeah.
How,
believe me, I know.
How nuts. So August 8th. Yeah, that's nuts, dude. That's pretty nuts. That's okay. So
I can hardly remember it. So
yeah, well, I'm trying to, you don't know, that's an easy date. That's an easy one to remember. But okay, so what were you listening to in the lead up to this first show? What were you into? What were you guys kind of dwelling on at that point?
Well, at the time I was really into, that was my hair band era. So 97, I was into, I know I did like Hanson. I did. I was inspired by them. I saw them on SNL, and I remember that being like a thing, like me looking at my little brother RJ and be like, well, those Hanson kids are on SNL playing a silly song just like our little songs. I'm like, we could totally do this.
That's awesome.
So there was that, but then we also were listening to a lot of Cinderella and Bon Jovi and all that stuff too, because that we were still kind of into that. So yeah, I remember being in the family van, and we didn't even have a band name yet. But my little brother, being the annoying little brother he is, sorry, little bro, I love you, but you were quite annoying at that age, and he was just egging on me. He's like, we have to have a band name. We can't go up there as Lzzy and RJ. And I'm like, okay. Finally, fine. What do you want to call it? And so we went through a bunch of things, and it was him, my little brother, finally was like, well, our last name is Hale. Why don't we just do Halestorm? Because I think it's funny every time the Weather Channel says Halestorm, it's like, it sounds like they're calling us or something. And I'm like, yeah, that'll work for today. So we entered ourselves as Halestorm at the Schuylkill County Fair in Pennsylvania. We played the one song we had written, which was a 5-minute song called Love is Power. We put a drum solo in the middle of it because my brother, unlike me, who has had to work very hard to be good at what I do, my brother was like born to do this. He was born keeping time, and so all I had to do was like write some songs. He plays to it.
Just John Bonham, just naturally. John Bonham, irritatingly naturally.
One of those kids where he was like ready, camera ready. He's like, "Where is it? Let me do this." And I don't know if you've ever met my little brother, but if you ever get the chance to, you'll understand that statement. It's like David Lee Roth, an animal from the Muppets put together. That's just his personality. He's very loud. You'll hear him before you see him. But we go on stage, we do this song, and we got the 3rd place trophy, which I still have right next to our Grammy.
Same.
Very important. But it was interesting because I remember that being like this crazy epiphany, because like we did lose to the tap dancing cowgirl, who was much cuter than we were, and then a little girl named that sang Little Orphan Annie's Tomorrow. Cool, whatever. But we went home, and I was like, do you think Mom and Dad would know any other places that we could play? Like, we have to do this again. So we were sitting at the dinner table, and I still remember what we were having. We were having chicken and mashed potatoes, and my brother's just has a mouthful of mashed potatoes, still trying to like talk through it. And he's like, well, I get to play drums again with you though, right, sis? And I'm like, yeah. We're a band. We're going to do this. And I'm telling my parents, I was like, this is what we're going to do. And like, we have to have a stage show, and we got to make sure, like, we don't know how to do a stage show, but my parents were crazy enough to be like, yeah, cool. We'll call around. And so we had like bowling alley gigs. Yeah. And coffee house gigs into the bars, then into the clubs, then into opening up for national acts. And then, where we're in now. So it's like, yeah, it's just a slow spiral out, but it's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago, yeah.
You had a Vinny and Dime thing.
Yeah, pretty
You had a
much.
mini time thing. You had the musician dad and just like go on and go out there and do it and do what I couldn't do and, you know, whatever. Like, it's awesome.
My parents in the past couple years have recently admitted to me that they were terrified because basically they said, well, we never really told you this because all I knew and all I remember in my comeuppings is like, no, my parents were totally cool with it, and they came to us. Obviously they had to drive us to the shows and stuff like that, and like stand there so that we weren't going to get like busted for being underage in the bars and stuff. But all I knew was like, oh no, they're just totally cool and they're down with it. Really inside they were terrified, and they're like, this is actually the last thing that we would have wanted for our little girl. Like, you're going into this business that has so much disappointment, and there's sex and drugs and temptations and danger, and you might not actually make it, you know, and there's going to be so many, it's just a gamble. But they told me, they're like, but we saw that you were going to do it anyway. Regardless of what we said, we saw that in your eyes, so we might as well support you. And yeah, so it's interesting. And so I ended up writing this song for our third record called Dear Daughter that was just about that. It was like, if I ever have a kid, would I be brave enough to let them be their full self and support them no matter what? And it's like, that's a big thing for a parent to do.
Do you think decisions you made and things you visualized then are the reason why it came true? Or do you think that you did something different then that made it happen? Or, I mean, not to say, well, obviously you wrote really good songs. That really helps. No, but you've written a lot of capital S songs. If you go back through your back catalog, it's like Halestorm have some capital S songs, and not every band does a bunch of those. Like, it's rare to even, you know, if you have one capital S song, that's awesome. But yeah, what do you think that's something about this time that did you kind of go, I'm doing it regardless? And did you look at someone else and go, well, they did it? Yeah.
I remember thinking, I remember the world kind of changing. As soon as we started the band, I went back into middle school. I went into 8th grade with like a leather trench coat and my Dio CDs and just completely owning it and being quite obsessed. The only time that I was really called in the principal's office was because I was peddling our first cassette tape in the hallways. I was handing it out. And
what was the artwork? What was the artwork on your first demo tape?
The album on our first demo tape, I don't know.
Like the artwork, yeah.
It was this red backdrop, and it had myself, I believe I had a keytar because I wasn't on guitar at the time, and we were just kind of like back to back, like my little brother and I.
That's adorable.
And it was called Halestorm Forecast for the Future.
Ooh, well, hey, it came up there. It works. Yeah. Okay, I have to ask you, because I saw on the internet that you said the first show you went to was Tool, Lateralus?
Mm-hmm. The first show, not the first show I went to. I went to a lot of local shows. My parents would, take us to festivals.
Actually, the local scene, actually. First of all, what was the local scene like? And were you guys accepted in it? Or was it, what was...
We were, in a weird way. Like, I look back on that, and there was a lot of metal bands that we were not hard yet. We had not found our teeth. And there were these metal bands that would just they would let us open up for them, and they would there was one band called Spine Belt, who ended up taking us on our first, they're actually still in the local scene in Pennsylvania. Awesome. Really sweet dudes. And they took a bunch of kids on our first trip to New York City. We played our first shows in New York City and opened up for them. And, basically, there's another band called Dead Leaves that would let us play a lot, and a band called Juiced. But it was an interesting scene because for me, I had to find my place, because at that point in time, they were either like in the girldom of it, there were either the girls that wanted to be David Draymond, or the girls that want to be Jewel. And that was about it. It's like that. And so I didn't want to be either one of those things. No offense to David. He's a great friend. He's a great friend of mine. But I don't want to be.
Wasn't
wasn't my thing. But even though I did love that first record, they knocked me out of the 80s super hard. A lot of these people that I met were introducing me to Disturbed, Seven Dust, all of that stuff. And I definitely found my edge during those years. But yeah, I wanted to figure it out. I'm like, okay, I don't want to just sit down with acoustic guitar. I want to learn how to play electric. I want to just kind of be that weird in the middle, like, and I want to be rock and roll, not too metal, but not too pop, that kind of thing. So it's interesting because like I was saying before, when I was in middle school, all of a sudden everything else came second. And I still credit that fire because I still have that. I still have that obsession with this band, because it's not just a band. This is an extension of my personality. It's part of my identity. I take things really personally because of it. It's not a job. It was never a job. The fact that I can call it a career is hilarious to me. It's like, what is life right now? So I think that there's a combination of you keeping that fire going, keeping that drive, because as soon as you start thinking about stuff like hits, money, popularity, fame, all of that, you start losing that little obsession, that little fire. But then you have to surround yourself with people that believe in you. You have to surround yourself with people that elevate you, that make you your best self, whether that means your crew members, whether that means, songwriting partners, whether that means producers, labels, A&R guys, all of that. Everyone needs to be that champion, because as soon as if there's one sourpuss, it just ruins everything.
Yeah.
So I think, we've worked really hard to kind of cultivate our culture, that around us and all of that, and our friends. And I remember my dad having a really funny saying. He said that the toes that you step on the way up are connected to the ass you're going to be kissing on the way down. So basically, it does not pay to be a dick in this business.
And you've had no illusions of, it sounds like he kind of, taught you about rock and roll culture. Because I think he was thrilled that we weren't wanting to be doctors and lawyers or into football or any of that, because this is the one thing that he actually knew something about. So yeah, he totally got. It was funny. He was in our band for a summer or two. Yeah. And this was like when you're a teenager and you're like, oh, Dad's really cool. Oh, wait, we shouldn't be seen with Dad. And so we had to sit Dad down and be just like, Dad, we're gonna look for our own age bass player. He's like, sorry, this has been really.
I know, he was really bummed. He was really bummed about it. I'm like, Dad, it's not good. That's not how that works. It's not gonna be this like family band, because he was like, it's like the Partridge Family meets Spinal Tap. I'm like, no.
He's like pitching you.
That's cute. And then I remember him saying, he's like, well, I still get to come to the gigs though, right? I'm like, well, yeah, we still can't drive.
Yeah, well, you're still a valuable part of the team. Yeah. Well, what did you think of Maynard when you saw? Yeah.
That was awesome. Yeah. So this is when I was 17. I was 17. And I had just bought my first tickets ever to a concert, and that I was going to by myself. It wasn't my family, everything. I was going to bring little brother, but then my mom said that maybe he was too young to go. So he still, to this day, is very angry about it, because I ended up taking a guy friend of mine that I actually was fancying. Yeah. And he ended up falling asleep the third song in. And so long story short, we never saw each other again. But I'm like, dude, I had these 2 tickets and I brought you with me, and you can't stay awake during a Tool show. Anyway, it was during the Lateralus tour, and it blew my mind. It was awesome. It was like, we had cheap seats and everything, but the production was crazy. There was just contortionists coming down from the ceiling and all the stuff of Nightmares on the back screen, and it was like I'd never seen a concert like that. So yeah,
it's profound. It must be weird for you to flip it and to be the other side of it, and okay, I've got to ask, what was it like learning Alice Cooper is a fan of you? I have to just I'm going to forget otherwise, and I feel like this is a poignant, an important thing. I got some, when I was looking for footage to steal for the film that you're in that I made, I was like that thing where he puts the top hat on your head, and I was just like, it was just like this profound moment. I was just like, oh, I just love this anointing kind of a thing that you kind of witness, and
it's like an out of body experience, because it's like you kind of come out and then back in of reality, because we went out on tour with Alice, and he is like everybody's cool dad, or uncle. He's like the sweetest man, and you forget that is Alice fucking Cooper. That he's the guy that showed you when you were a kid that it's okay to be weird. You forget. And I ended up telling him that story about taking his CD to the slumber party, and he was so proud. He's like, I'm so proud of that. And I'm like, really? He's like, man, that moment where like all of a sudden everybody's looking at you and like that's when you realize that the fact that I was a part of that just makes me so proud. I'm like, awesome.
It's adorable.
But it's weird because like, so then you're on stage with the guy and he's putting the top hat on your head or and then you walk backstage and he goes into his dressing room to go get undone and all that. And you're like, if only my 13-year-old self could see me now, it's like, it would blow her little mind. And she probably wouldn't believe it at all. So it's definitely an out of body experience. And the fact that I'm friends with most of my idols, I've gotten, I've had Tom Kiefer, stay on my couch. I have some of the guys from Skid Row, like, are my dearest friends. I've met Joan Jett. She's signed my guitar and we've played together before. It's really crazy. I've met the Hart sisters too.
Yeah.
Nancy, super awesome. Very strong hand grip, by the way. It's like, oh my God. But yeah, it's a strange thing to think about because it's so magical when you're a kid, and it's still magical. It's still magical now. It's just that now I get to see myself in maybe a closer reflection of who they are, and I've carved out my own path. But it's also, I remember telling this to Lita Ford, and we're like, I'm so glad you didn't give up. Because if that had been the case, if all of my, female fronted everybody or even male, whatever, there's a certain part of the story they were trying to make it and it was just too hard or nobody took them seriously and they just gave up. Well, then I would have nothing to go off of because all of these people had made it to a certain point that I want to be, I want to be in my 70s still singing my songs, that's the goal. And so the fact that all of these people are doing it is just, they're lifers.
Yeah. Well, you're a lifer. It's pretty clear.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like
you're going to have to drag me off the stage. You're going to have to be like, Lzzy, it's not cute anymore. Get off.
Tell that to Lemmy. I won't. Yeah.
I know. Anybody.
Have you spent time with Lemmy?
No, I never got to meet Lemmy.
That's absurd. That
we
should have
saw
happened.
this was later on. We would frequent the Rainbow in LA, and we saw him playing his games at the bar. And at the time, I was like, I'm not going to go over there and be like, hey, I'm in a band called Halestorm, somebody that you've probably never heard of, and hi, I'd like to meet you. I've been very fortunate enough that I've gotten to prove myself to a lot of my idols, so it's not just like me approaching, be like, hey, I did all of that when I was like 17, 18. I was like, hey, I'm Lzzy Hale, I'm in a band, and you should listen to me. Very aggressive.
It's interesting. With men and women and earning your place and respect and all that sort of stuff, because there is a flip. I'm sure that you've dealt with an absurd amount of bullshit over the years, because every woman who has, like, it doesn't even, you don't even have to be a musician. If you're a woman and you're with a bunch of dudes, people have said some just ridiculous shit to you and you're just like, really? Are you really doing that? Am I going to write this down? No. Okay, cool. I get it. But there is a flip to that, in that that people might be like, oh, you look young, or yeah, sure. And then, but the second they see your competence, they suddenly flip and just, you're a brother in the brotherhood sort of thing. Did you have that experience? Like, did you have these moments of like that? Because I think that is the flip of the rock and roll world. They will, if you prove yourself, there's respect, and you're a brother in the brotherhood sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely. And that became kind of an obsession with mine, because once I realized that nobody was going to expect me to be in the band at all. I remember going even early on, like going into bars, I'd be carrying in my guitars or my equipment, and these guys would be like, oh, that's adorable. My girlfriend never carries in my equipment, you know, and it's like, I'm not. So when I realized that, you know, and this would happen over and over again, or like, hey, the merch table's over there, or like, hey, we're gonna put all the girlfriends in this family room or something back there. I'm like, dude, I'm setting up my. Anyway, when I realized that was going to be the case, I started using that as kind of my secret weapon. So I would have the guys in my band kind of start the set a little bit, or not even. But I wouldn't be on stage. I would be out in the audience in a hoodie or something with a microphone, and I would start singing, and everyone would be like looking on stage like, who's that singing, whatever, and then I'd get up in a skirt and be like, hey, it's me, motherfuckers, you know. But so it was interesting to kind of chase that, and that's and part of the reason why I started wearing heels on stage was because I'm like, well, there's one more thing that you boys won't do.
Yeah.
And
shout out to Dolly Parton, I feel, on
really
some level.
can do it if you had the balls, but you won't.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, it's just it's one of those things where you have to, you know, not get super mad about it and just understand that that is a thing that's going to happen. And but it's kind of interesting now though, because like this was back in the day, and this was, you know, whatever, 20 some years ago.
Oh my God.
On, and it has been. It's only been maybe about 5 or 6 years that I've really seen this huge change in rock music, especially hard rock. It's like 60% women right now. It's like if you turn on, you know, Sirius XM or you know, any of these hard rock channels, you will hear any number of us on stage. So it's not such a rarity.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a beautiful thing, and it's evolution. It's the fact that all of us women were brave enough to stick it out and get out there and make sure we're inspiring the next generation to keep going, or inspiring somebody to pick up an instrument and be like, I can do this too.
Yeah. The
know,
fandom continues.
Yeah, absolutely. And same thing with people in your profession. It's like you've had to deal with bullshit too, because it's a you know,
yeah.
Industry, yours as well. And I've heard so many stories, you know, from, you know, VJs to DJs to you know, journalists and all of that, and having to battle that too. So it's a beautiful day and age we're living in, where we can kind of wield our power in a new way.
Totally. I'm not hanging. It's not just me and a bunch of dudes from guitar magazines, a bunch of nerdy dudes from guitar magazines. It's just me. You know, you've had the equivalent experience, and it goes on. What I guess, okay, so in the lead up to like your first record and stuff, and you're getting a record deal, and what were you listening to at this point, and what were you looking out and going, well, what kind of an artist do I want to be if we get on this big stage? And you know, because it's interesting the difference between talking to especially metal and punk rock people. And Nate from Converge said something really interesting, which I thought was interesting. He said, above a certain age, none of us thought it could happen for us. Above it, like, he's like, it's pre-Nirvana and post-Nirvana. If you didn't see Nirvana like be huge, you honestly were like, we're never going to be successful. Like, we're never going to be a big deal. We're never going to have a big record label. We're never going to, like, it's just never going to happen for us, and we don't need it to. Whereas anyone below a certain age, and I think he might be right, went, well, if Nirvana can do it, of course they can. So what was your perspective on it? Like, did you guys think it was possible, or because obviously it was possible. You did it.
We were doing, we ended up, we did the math, and we did about 1,500 shows or something before we were signed. So we were doing it on our own anyway. We were, you know, a regional band. We would go back and forth. We had a van, and we were doing it super DIY, and we were showcasing for labels. We would meet some people. We met some lawyer friends who, like, so we showcased for Mercury Records, Hollywood Records, Epic, Columbia, Island Def Jam when that was still a thing, and everybody kind of said the same thing. They're like, we've come out and we've seen you, you've been in our offices, and we like you, you're very consistent, but we don't know what to do with you. And that was mainly because of the girl factor, because it wasn't necessarily a thing to be a chick on the radio. Because this was pre-Amy Lee too, because when Amy Lee broke out, I was like, see? It's totally a thing. But so by the time we got signed in 2005. And by the time we got signed, we had already had so much of that, like, well, we don't know. We don't. It's like, if we're not going to want to pair with a label unless they're like stoked, unless they're like, we know what to do with you, we know where to put you, that kind of thing. So we basically just said, well, screw it. We're just going to keep doing what we do.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the confidence in ourselves, where it's like, we're just going to keep writing. We're going to keep gigging. We're doing it anyway, and let's just see what happens. And lo and behold, as soon as we get in that mindset, after a little while, we started playing this club in New York City called Don Hills, and we totally faked it till we made it, because we had never really had a following in New York City. And so we would cart all of our super fans in Pennsylvania in this big van and go to New York City to do these gigs.
That's
so
genius.
It was packed with people.
That's genius. Well, like Reba from Code Orange is like, us bringing our friends could make or break a scene. Like a band bringing all their friends, it was an absolutely big deal in Pittsburgh. Same kind of deal. Like, you got to so you brought your people.
I'm not ashamed at admitting that stuff.
That's genius.
Rowdy and whatever. But it started happening where it's like, all of a sudden there was this guy, his name was Lee Lust, and he was an A&R guy at Atlantic Records. And he came to see us, and then all of a sudden the next time we played Don Hills, it was, him and an intern, and then there was like the radio people were there. It was like every time there was like more and more Atlantic Records people that were kind of trickling in. Until finally they kind of popped the question. They said, well, we want you to come down to the offices. We want to do some stuff and see what you think and all of that. And so we kind of had to make a decision. It was kind of hard, actually, because we said, well, we could keep doing what we're doing, and it will be totally fine. Or we can take a chance at this major label who signed Zeppelin back in the day, by the way, Yeah,
Ahmet Odegan. Ahmet Odegan started Atlantic and signed them when Atlantic was a rhythm and blues label, and took this huge risk. And I love that guy. He's like one of those music people that you kind of get a bit obsessed by. Carry on. Yeah, that's a good legacy to be a part of, man. Yeah.
He's a legend, and he had such a vision and such an ear, and really just, the scene wouldn't be the same without him.
No.
Without him knowing where to put these people. So we kind of had to make that decision. It was like, well, we know this would work, being on our own, or we can take a chance and accept the proposal and let's do this thing. Yeah. And it was weird because so that same guy, Lee Lust, ended up basically in a meeting. He's like, I'll fall on a sword for this band, and he signed us. And he had this whole interesting vision for us, because we were, obviously we were a live band first. We hadn't had a whole lot of recording experience, except for like the small, hey, we just gathered $300 to $400. Let's go in for a day and record 6 songs, that kind of thing. So he was like, well, why don't you go out on the road? So we did a 5-song live EP, and it was just like, live songs that we had been playing. And we went out on the road, and we went out with Seether and Shinedown and Trapped, and man, the whole scene, that whole sound. The whole scene in 05, 06, 07. The
mid-2000s. No one talks about it. The 2000s.
And we sold just a shit ton of those little EPs and proved ourselves to Atlantic that we could build a following, that we had people that were interested. Awesome. Then we went in to make the first record. So it was just, it's been a journey, and it's been a couple different lifetimes.
Yeah.
Things, but still you have to, that same thing, that little North Star has to remain. You can't be unsure.
Yeah.
Of that you are meant to do this, and I'm not even saying that I chose this. I always say this a lot. I think that music chooses you, and especially rock music with because it's like, I'm sure if I could have chosen my path, it would have been something a lot easier.
Yeah, it's
than this, but this is what it is for me, and it's still something that I love, and so as long as you keep that ahead of yourself, I think you'll all be all right.
Yeah. Well, what were you listening to when you were making that first album, the first big one? Yeah. It was a great, you had some great songs. That was a great fun time, like there were some great songs on there, and it's just like,
I think we thought we were a little heavier than we were, because during the first and second records, we were listening to a lot of Lamb of God.
So you were like, just like this.
You totally won't hear it in most of any of the songs. That would be not something that you're guessing. But we were listening to a lot of that music, and we went back and we listened to a lot of our influences, and we were trying to kind of really hone what do we want to do, what's our handshake to the world, and
Yeah.
so we ended up. It's funny because we spent 19 months in California from the beginning of us doing demos through till the end of mixing and mastering, mainly
That's
because so we just thought we thought we were getting dropped. We thought we were going home like nearly every single week because our A&R guy got fired during the making of our first record.
Dude.
This was in 2008, where it's like Atlantic cut like 800 people. The labels, they were going through this whole digital, rebirth, and so the labels were losing money. They were all of our peers that we were touring with in years. They were getting dropped left and right. So we would go down to this corner store. We were living at the Oakwoods in Burbank, California, just sharing one tiny apartment together. We'd go down to the corner store and buy a really cheap bottle of champagne because that's all we could afford. And we'd be like, well, we're going back to Pennsylvania, guys. I don't know. This was fun. We never even made it to our first record, but for whatever reason, Atlantic hung on, and we ended up making the first record. The first guy that wanted to make our record backed out, and then Howard Benson came in, and then this freelance guy, Pete Gambar, came in to kind of help us organize because we had like 67 songs that we had narrowed down to our first record. We had like 67. We didn't know what to do. So this guy came in and he ended up getting hired by Atlantic as head of A&R, and then we were his first project on Atlantic. We couldn't have bought that type of luck. But anyway, long story short, it's like, who knows? Like it's like that Joe Walsh quote from the Eagles documentary. It's like, when you're in it, it just seems like such chaos, and you're just throwing stuff against the wall. You're trying to see what works. And then when you look back, it seems like a finely crafted novel, like somebody had planned this all along, and we're just the whole time. We just have no idea. So, yeah, but I don't know. It's like, it's still fun. Those are the things that you talk about. Like, we terrorized that apartment complex too. We would get these we'd order these like stink bombs, those little vials that would just like smell like ass, and we would just throw them in other people's windows and stuff. And just like, we have my guitar player just found a bunch of old like videos of
really,
like just partying and
do the Dime Vision version for Halestorm.
And so like, we're gonna have to figure out a way to actually view those, because I'm pretty sure they're on tape, because we're old school like that.
Yeah, you should do it like the Dime Vision tapes. Do it like the Volga display. It'll be just like that, obviously. I don't keep bringing up Pantera. They're brothers. They're siblings.
No, they're awesome, dude. Vinnie Paul. First time I ever met Vinnie Paul, we were playing this gig together in Texas, and he walks up to me, head to toe in snakeskin.
He's not messing around.
I'm talking snakeskin hat, shirt, jacket, pants, shoes, probably socks. I didn't see his socks. And he's singing one of our songs on our first record called "It's Not You." He's like, "I'm in love with." He's like, I got three of your albums. He's like, one in my limo, one in my house, and one in my other house. I'm like, okay. Vinny knows what songs we have. It's awesome. He was such a sweet, sweet man. Vinny actually took me to my first strip club. It was his strip club.
Okay, the only time I've ever been to a strip club was when the Hell Yeah Boys were in town. That was my first strip club experience.
He was so sweet because he's like, have you ever been? Because like at the time I had never been, but I want to go. And so he went, and he had like some of the girls dance to "I Get Off" and all that stuff. I'm just like, that's so. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is so cool. I'm sitting in a strip club and this girl's spinning around to my song. It's amazing.
That's pretty badass. That's
man, he had a lot of he was a lifer, pure rock and roll in his blood, and such a nice dude, and very, very very conscious about who he was to people, because he was never a bad guy to me. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's
and I've met a lot of dudes that I'm just like, hell no. Even if I don't care who you are, you're being an ass.
Yeah. There's a lot of chaff amongst the wheat. Let's say, and
True.
And that was I mean, what were when you first would you say I Get Off, that was your first big giant moment where you're like, whoa, 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 kind of thing? Or yeah.
Yeah, that was our first single of our first record, so
Yeah.
it was like it was crazy to hear it on the radio. I remember, I think we were rolling. We were still touring in an RV at the time, and we were rolling through. I think it was Minnesota, either Minnesota or Montana, something with an M. I forget specifically. My guitar player and bass player are much better with with the small details. I remember the broad feelings, but I remember it coming on the radio and us like literally getting out the video camera. This is before the iPhone, but it was like, the video camera, like, what, video, and it's just like, I don't know. It's still cool though. It's still cool. I listen to a lot of rock radio, and I hear us more on there than ever before, and every single time it still trips me up because I'll hear the intro. Like the split second when the song comes on, you're like, I know this one. Oh, wait, it's me.
That makes me happy.
It's so magical because you never think that's ever going to happen. And like, even after we released the first record and we released the second one, you'd never think that's going to be a thing. And it's still amazing. And like, if they say your name, in the advertisements, it's like, oh, dude, there we are. That's cool. So it's still super magical.
Yeah, well, on that note, what are the 5 songs that changed your life?
Ooh,
I once again keep dropping this on people with no advance notice.
That's cool. Okay, 5 songs changed my life. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Forgive me for my dated vocabulary, but I'm gonna go back. Somebody Save Me by Cinderella. I'm gonna go with Stand Up and Shout by Dio. I'm going to go with, this is another Dio one, Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath.
Yeah. You taught yourself that song, didn't you?
Yeah, well, at least I tried when I was a kid. now I know, but it's like when you're a kid, it's like, oh, I can figure that out. Yeah. Not with the finesse of Tony Iommi, but 18 by Alice Cooper. Strange one, I want to say Wildflowers by Tom Petty.
Yeah.
And then Grace by Jeff Buckley. I don't know whether that was 5. That could have been 6.
I think
but
that would have come out when you were just starting to play music, Grace.
It was, but I didn't get into it until a little later. I didn't know about Jeff Buckley until I had met my buddies that are in my band, and my guitar player, Jeff Buckley, changed his life because it was all of a sudden when music wasn't just about having fun. It could actually, like, when the lyrics and the music actually moved together to make you feel something. And so that was his epiphany as a guitar player who he's like, I listen to lyrics last. I don't do. but he introduced me to Jeff Buckley, and it blew my mind. But it's like those were a couple different tiers of me having my mind blown. I will say, I guess you can replace or swap any one of those out with that live record from Heart, On the Road Home, because I don't think I would actually be singing the way I am without that one. Mainly because and if you've never heard it, there's a version of Crazy on You on that record that is otherworldly. It sounds nothing like the record or what you hear on the radio. It was just beautiful and half a cappella, half organ. And I ended up doing that version a lot. Whenever we would cover any Heart, I would do that version and not necessarily the one on the radio. So, yeah, there's just been a lot. That's such a hard question because there's been a lot that, have sparked something or have changed the course,
Yeah.
I could bring in Seven Dust's Home, because if it wasn't for Seven Dust's Home, I wouldn't be into hard rock. I wouldn't be in. So that they snapped me out of the classic rock. Whereas like that was like once I heard Licking Cream and Denial, and like it was all over. Like I was obsessed with Seven Dust. So yeah, there's that as well.
Yeah, you're a hair metal kid. You are kind of a hair metal kid.
Yeah. Because it's like, so I was born in 83.
Yeah.
So technically I should have been a child of the 90s in my teenage years. But in my teenage years, instead of being into grunge, I was into hair metal. And then when it got into the 2000s, I was like, I was still like, I was listening to Nirvana and I was doing that. And my guitar player actually ended up introducing me to a lot of like SDP and Smashing Pumpkins. He would make mix CDs for me. Like, here's your grunge homework, but then I was already into, I was into Seven Dust and Tool and Disturbed and all of that. And like, I know every word to, all of those records. So yeah.
I'd like to see you do a Tool cover. Have you ever done a Tool cover?
Huh?
Have you ever done a Tool cover? Have I missed? Yeah.
No, we haven't.
That would be pretty badass.
It's a scary thing. We thought about Schism for a while. And at this point in time, I think that I may end up doing it in karaoke just to see if I can actually do it.
What is your karaoke go-to, actually?
Oh, dude, I am a karaoke junkie only because I can get up there, and for the most part, I live in Nashville now, so for the most part, unless it's like a super populated area, I can go to certain karaoke bars and no one will really know who I am, which is great. So I can get up there and just do whatever. So I'll do like Journey, but not Don't Stop Believin'. I do like Separate Ways, and then I do Bonnie Raitt, I Can't Make You Love Me, because why not? And like, I just, all of those things. I just like everything that I can think of that I think I know, I'll go up and do it. And it's really funny because now, like, you'll get some mom coming up to you and be just like, have you ever heard of American Idol? Like, you should go. Like you should have a career in this. And so it makes me feel good. It's like, yeah, Mama still got it. It's
oh my God. I just think that, the idea of just being in a karaoke bar and you just roll up and you're like, dun, dun, dun. I'm pretty into this. Like, good on Nashville, they're having their moment.
But yeah, I'll have to put some Tool into that or something.
Yeah, I'd just like to see it. Look, I'm just saying, I'd like to see it. It's daunting.
We'll have to roll it into some karaoke bars next time we're together.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. There's no options. I'm somewhat terrified to do karaoke with you, but I will step over my fear and step into the Terradome.
Technically, I just recently learned this. Technically, karaoke, I guess, translates to out of tune. So if you're singing the song right, technically you're doing it wrong. So I'm the wrong one here. But it is fun because it's like, and it's the cheesiest versions of everything.
Yes.
So like, the music is always bad. The only thing I've never done, and I just talked about this with Amy Lee, because I'm like, have you ever sung your own song in karaoke? And she's like, no. And I'm like, me neither. It's like, and then we both are like, we should go to a karaoke bar and sing each other's songs. And I'm like, ooh,
that would be yeah. What, you guys must have been fans.
And I'm like, Amy, then you're just gonna sit there and judge me on your own song singing it? No, come on.
I love that you guys are making tunes together and stuff. It's great.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. She's a rad human, and we got a tour coming up in November. It's gonna be our first arena tour back, and I couldn't think of a better way. She's a great human. She's a really good friend. We've had some times.
You must have shared a lot of experiences, like, over the years. Like, you've had a lot of parallels.
Oh yeah. Well, it's interesting too to have those friends. I'm really good friends with Taylor Momsen as well, and it's funny because she's a decade younger than me, but she's such an old soul that we kind of, and I'm immature, so we meet in the middle somewhere. But she's so intelligent with the way that she has conducted herself, and we share a lot of stories. We get stoned and FaceTime. They actually, it's funny. I think that she was the one I did that the most with over the pandemic, where it's like, hey, what are you doing right now? It's like, we're just sitting around. And it's like, well, so are we. Let's just do that.
It's a weird thing. Hey, it's nice. I like that. That pleases me. Well, what? Yeah, I mean, what?
It pleases me. Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I sound like a weirdo. What have you like? Yeah. How do you want to present? Like, I don't know. How do you see the intersection of like sex and rock and roll and what you've kind of put out and being a kind of that person? Because I don't know. Like, what do you want to put out at this point? Because I love that there's women being like empowered, like sexual beings, and like rock and roll. I mean, it is rock and roll. But how do you kind of see all that?
Well,
yeah. I don't know. It's kind of not much of a question. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. It's interesting. I love talking about it because it's a part of who I am, and this is a subject that I really love to write about and I like to put out in the world because it either gets people going, oh hell yeah, or raising the eyebrows like, what did you just say? I don't know, on the radio.
I'm on the hell yeah. I'm on the hell yeah team. Yeah.
But yeah, I know you are. But sex and rock and roll have gone hand in hand since the beginning of time. It's like, and especially since I was growing up, listening to, David Lee Roth and Rob Halford and all these people,
Rob Halford, the ultimate.
Everyone's talking about it. And what people don't realize is that when women write about sex, it's a whole other level because we are thinking about it in these kind of multi-layers, and we think about it like it's an extension of us, and so in a lot of ways this is me wielding my song is me wielding this like phallic fantasy basically that all the guys are just singing about it, but we own it, and I love that. And so to me it's a big part of who I am, and I think that it's important, especially on the girl side, for girls to see women owning their sexuality, not being afraid to talk about it, not making it so incredibly taboo, because it's not, and it's not that way for the other gender. It shouldn't be that way for us, So you have to flip it on its head. I will tell you that there's a little bit of a how do I put this? There's a little bit of there's a certain way that I like to write now, presently, because of the last record. I wrote a song about a threesome that I had in Holland. It's called "Do Not Disturb," and it ended up being a single, much to the chagrin of many journalists who you could tell the ones that actually were curious, and then the ones that were like, my boss is making me ask this, and they didn't think I was actually going to answer. And so I'm like, yeah, let me tell you about it. And I would see so many journalists get just beat red, the poor things, just like embarrassed about it. And it's like, it's all good. You asked me the question. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I like that part of it too, because it's kind of like, it's rock and roll, but it's with a smile. And you're able to kind of almost dominate over other people by being willing to speak your truth and by being willing to say what you want to say in a song. It's dangerous, and it makes people either go, hey, I love you, or oh my god, I hate you.
We live in a fairly puritanical time. Like, yeah, we live in a puritanical time. Like, there is a new Puritan kind of essence. And yeah, what have you been listening to? Because you guys, obviously, you put out an album every 3 years, so obviously you're going to put out an album in the next 5 minutes. Obviously, that's just the law. It's like seasons.
We're in the 11th hour of getting this record finished, and you'll be hearing music pretty soon from us. I'm going to say within the next 2 months. So.
Awesome. Well, what have you been listening to while you've been making this? What's
a lot of things. On the weirder side of it, I've been listening to actually a lot of there's a station called FIP Radio. It's a French rock radio station. It's called FIP. You can actually stream it, but it gets really weird. It's like they fused all these artists. It's like rock and blues and jazz, but it all has this like oversheen of this like hard rock but rock mentality kind of thing. And sometimes at about 4 a.m. it gets a little weird, or you're just like, is that like crickets in the back of this and with a tambourine and a sax solo? It gets a little strange. So on that end, that's like when I don't know what I want to listen to. But I've definitely been listening to all of my peers that have had albums come out. Yeah. The latest Code Orange, poor kids, they had just finished their record, and then lockdown happened. It's like, oh my gosh, they were like gonna tour, and so I love that record. I love the new Pretty Reckless record. Obviously I love Amy's record. There's a lot of records out there right now. I've been listening to some new Royal Blood. I think that's cool. Yeah, I don't know. I've been listening to a lot of Octane and a lot of just a lot of hard rock radio lately.
Yeah.
Because I got out of it for a second because I was just kind of like trying to step away from the things that I kind of knew.
Yeah.
And then when I stepped back into it after we kind of had most of the record written, stepped back into rock radio, and all of a sudden you see the place where you sit. You see your spot in that world. Whereas I think for a little while, just because of the craziness and the roller coaster ride that was a year and change
Yes.
ago, in the before.
Yes.
I think that I was searching for something more inward, and so I wasn't listening to a whole lot of what was happening in the world. Except for I did get obsessed with the Run the Jewels record.
Yeah. That's
put
fun.
out in 2020. But who doesn't like that? So
That's a good time. That was on.
But
yeah.
now it's been a lot of fun to just see what everybody is putting out in the world, as we're all reemerging into this new life. And I think it's a beautiful thing to see what everybody's like mission statement is.
Yeah. What is your mission statement these days?
I think that I want to celebrate in every way that I possibly can. I think that what I've learned both internally and then externally during this whole time is that I needed to write this record in order to have that space to celebrate, to say, okay, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. Here's my confidence. Here, I'm going to lay everything out on the table. I will tell you that our new record is not going to be a whole lot of wah. Like, there isn't going to be any like, oh, the world is ending and whatever. It's like, there's a lot of empowerment to it because, and you would think, and I have written those songs, but you would think that would be where I would go. I would retreat into my space, my personal space, when I'm having a hard time recognizing who I am, when the one thing that you love about yourself is stolen from you because all of a sudden I sat by myself in the middle of this pandemic thinking, well, who am I without touring? Who am I without the band? Who am I without, any of this stuff that has been a part of my life, that has been a part of my identity? So all of a sudden I had to like look at myself in the mirror, just like, all right, who is this girl that is standing here? And I had to allow myself to kind of reinvent and recreate all of that, recreate my confidence, recreate what all of that meant to me, but through songwriting. So it kind of saved me in a way. And what it ended up being on this, next record is this display of I'm just going to kick the world in the face, and I don't care what anybody thinks about it. I don't care if you can love me, you can hate me, all that really matters is what I think about myself, and we're just going to come in swinging because that's all I can do at this point. And that's all I want to do. I don't want to come in and like talk about how the world almost ended. It's like, no, this is our rebirth.
Yeah.
Like we have, we survived.
So interesting. All the different ways we're all like artists are dealing with it, and all the different ways that, like Devin Townsend, he just made this really insane thing that was like this giant layered thing with like 60 different musicians, and now he's like, now I want to make an accessible album, an album that's super accessible with a producer for the first time. And I'm like, but he's like, I had to do that first. So it's like, I just think it's fascinating the way you've all like incubated that. And I feel like I think we need to like kick the door down rock and roll record right now. Like I think we've all been sad enough. It's weird. Most people have had they've experienced the bummers over the last year and a half. It's hard, especially people who are fans of rock and roll. I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like to be on the stage. It's like all the recipients, we're all like, we don't get to like be around each other and like,
I know. Yeah. Well, and that was my church.
Yeah.
This is my the closest thing that I've found to a religion for me, or a congregation for me, has been at the rock show. And I have never gone this long since the beginning of Halestorm, since the Schuylkill County Fair, to wrap it all up in a nice bow. Yeah. I've never gone this long without a show, because even when I was 13 and 14, we had like a bowling alley gig twice a month. We had like we played Sam Goody's at the mall like 3 times. You know, it's like, yeah, really, we actually, a small story short,
Go on.
we built my dad was kind of handy. He was like a mechanic
Yeah.
dude, also a bass player, but mechanic. And we built a rotating upside down drum kit for my little brother. We had an old tractor axle, some Ford seat belts, some steel beams, welded all together, bolted a kit down, one of RJ's like my first drum kit, down, strapped him in, velcroed his feet to the pedals, and let him fly. It was all manual, but we took that to the mall. There is YouTube video if you ever want to laugh, like anything from like 97 through 99, we were using that. And yeah, it was usually my mom in the background, so we always had a joke. We're like, don't make mom mad before she swings you around on the I think about that. I told my dad that. I'm just like, Dad, my brother was like 11. Like, isn't like rule number 1 of parenting, don't shake the baby? It's like, we could have really hurt him. It's like, but don't get me wrong.
Actually,
it was so much fun.
Do you guys disagree on things? Wait, like your fandom, you and RJ's fandom. Yeah, let's briefly. I know I've kept you a bit, but briefly, what do you guys disagree on?
My brother and I are polar opposites when it comes to personalities. Like I've always been the Dean Martin to his Jerry Lewis. He's always been like, here we go. He's the loudest person in the room. Heart of gold, super sweet, always very outgoing. I've always been kind of like, I've worked my way from in to out, We don't fight on a whole lot. We don't. We have different views of maybe how logically we should be doing certain things, or, hey, maybe like, okay, so there's a small thing that just happened. So I have a like an OCD thing where it's like, I can't let my texts be unread, or like any emails be unread. I have to read them, or at least get that little icon thing off of my phone.
Yep.
And I looked down at his phone the other day, my brother's phone, and he's got like 72 missed messages. I'm like, how do you stand that? We have fundamentally different ways of going about life. We don't fight a whole lot though. But we've learned how to not not break the band up over spilled milk and all that, because we know how to talk to each other. Like he knows when I'm talking to him and I'm his big sister, or I'm talking to him and I'm your bandmate. It's like there's a different hat. And I think we all kind of have that in the band, because like, all of us are like super friends, Josh, is like a brother to me, and it's like a brother from another mother and all that. So like we all know how to like ebb and flow. But yeah. I think we have more disagreements with our parents now. As we get older, we're just like, Mom, what are you doing? It's like they've become the children all of a sudden. It's like, and now like all of a sudden, my brother and I are the voice of reason. And we're like, what are you doing, Dad? That's silly. What are you doing?
Aww, that's nice.
But it's cute, and we'll forgive them because they allowed us to live our dream in the early days. So.
Well, they definitely played a role, really, didn't they? You can't discredit the family Hale. Yeah.
They could have been totally like against it, and then I would have had to make a decision to either defy my parents and follow my dream, or just like go to college. And I wonder what I would be doing. Would it be like marine biology? I know I thought about that when I was like 9.
Yeah.
I also wanted to be a forest ranger.
Really?
I wanted to be a forest ranger, but I also wanted to write a novel. So I was going to forest range whilst I was writing a novel.
Well, I guess rock and roll's kind of like that. There's a lot of Neanderthals wandering around.
Oh yeah, I think that I achieved my dream.
Yeah.
My 9-year-old would be proud.
What are the lyricists that really affected you when you started to write songs and stuff, as a lyricist? Like, how do you start writing a song? I was saying this to Reba from Code, because Reba from Code Orange and you have enormous parallels, because you both started so young. You both started in a band at 13. Like, it's quite funny actually to kind of to see it in these different areas, and you're not really that far away from each other either. So it's like it's cool seeing these, you guys kind of rise up and do that. But yeah, how do you write? Yeah, how did you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long journey with that, because it's like when the things that you're attracted to when you're a kid, so like I said, I was like loving Alice Cooper, or I loved some of the lyrical, and the big dumb rock songs of of say Bon Jovi. I always thought that he had a really good knack for just the big idea. And then you get into even somebody from that's even a little before his time. Tom Petty has always been a huge lyrical inspiration for me, because every single time that you hear one of those songs, you're like, that is the best way that possibly could have been said. So as I get older, it's more about what's the best way I can say this, instead of, I can just say this in a very matter of fact way and write a riff to it. And or I was a big fan early on. And the main reason why, especially our first two records, were a lot of twist of phrase. The reason that there is the I get off on you, getting off on me. There's the reason that there's love bites, so do I. There's a reason that the Miss Hyde thing was all from the Alice Cooper camp, because he had a knack for taking something and just twisting it just far enough that it's weird.
Yes.
And even though it's a bigger, dumber idea. And nowadays, though, it's like even beyond the rock thing, I think Jason Isbell is just such a beautiful lyricist and songer. Same thing with Brandi Carlile. Not to totally get in now we're into the Americana era.
But we have to, you're in Nashville. You'd have to seep in.
It kind of comes to the territory. But every time there's the joke comes on by Brandi Carlile, or really there's 2 or 3 Jason Isbell songs. There's one called Vampires, and there's a spot in each song. It's like the second verse. There must be like a trick with the second verse, and that's what I'm studying this now, because I'm like, absorb. I'm sponge. But soak me. But don't take that in the wrong way. I'm the I get off girl. Just do it. It's fine. My fans are gonna have to feel bad. But they always make me cry, and it, like, for some reason, it just, like, it brings out a certain emotion. So I think we're always searching. As far as writing a song, I do it in a couple different ways. A lot of times it's going to be an idea first, whereas that means it's the title, or at least the basic mission statement, broad idea. And then I start free writing. So free writing is basically, I have tablets. I still write with a pen and paper. I have tablets everywhere, where it's like I'll commit to at least 3 or 4 pages of gibberish of whatever it is. So, like, let's say, you want to talk about death or something, and commit to 3 or 4 pages about everything that brings to mind. And then you go back and you kind of start circling. This is kind of a fast track way to do it. A lot of times it's a little bit more organic, but if you really want to fast track to it, go back and you start like kind of writing. It doesn't matter whether it's, the punctuation, anything, but just write whatever comes to mind. No rhyme or reason. And then certain things will start to kind of reveal themselves, and then I put them on a separate piece of paper and then start expanding from there. Now, I've also taken instrumentals that we've written as a band. So we'll jam either here or at the studio, and come up with like a body of work that has no lyrics and no idea. And then I'll take it up. I have a specific writing room that I use for that just has kind of like a small amplifier for like riffing around, and then my vocal chain. And I'll just try to write something on top of it, because there's a different way to write too, where it's like if I have an instrument in my hand, I'm going to be writing different than if I don't. Yeah. So there's many ways to skin that cat. And sometimes it comes from a drum groove that my brother will start playing and be like, oh, hey, melody will come to mind. And, and a lot of times, and sometimes it comes out in like 5 minutes. Most times it doesn't. And there are some songs that I've written like 5 different versions. Our song Miss Hyde on our second record, there were 5 different songs that had that same subject before we came in, before it finally my head wrapped around Miss Hyde. And like, oh, okay, like the one was called like Black Stockings, and the whole idea was like, oh, I put something on, or maybe it's my leather jacket and I become this different person. But just like all of a sudden it was like, wait, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Mrs. Hyde. There we go. But so like you have to be willing to spend a lot of time on something, and then just, we're going to throw it away, start again, because you inherently, you take all of those things that you learned from that first or second draft or whatever into the next draft. So if you don't think it's right, don't settle, and so that's, and it's the hardest thing to do, believe me, because I want to settle. I want it to be done.
It's called killing your babies in filmmaking. You got to kill your
Yeah.
babies. You just have to
Gotta-
kill it. Like, it's cold, but it's like you can't
Kill the
get
children.
married to it. Just kill the babies. Just you got to like just let them go. You gave birth. Like, just it's fine. Just
I'm gonna get that tattooed. Just
kill the babies. It'll go down great in Nashville. It'll go down great. Have you ever met Dolly Parton? Okay, just randomly.
No, I've never met her, but I saw her. I've seen her twice perform, and it's one of the best shows I've ever seen. She's so funny and so soulful.
So great.
And so good. Oh, yes, I love her so much. I think everybody loves her.
I'm sorry I just had to bring up Dolly Parton.
I don't like Dolly Parton. We can't be friends.
I feel the exact same. What's wrong with you? Like, you kind of go, like she's another person who started music real young, and you knew what you wanted to do. Yeah, that's
and think about talk about an amazing lyricist.
Yeah,
just go actually read the lyrics to Jolene. It's the most beautiful jealousy, it's like, it's almost like she like admires, it's like it's like what Katy Perry with I Kissed a Girl and what who did Girl Crush? Little Big Town. It's like those two people really wanted to be Jolene. She already accomplished that. One of the coolest moments I saw her at the Ryman a couple years ago out here in Nashville, and she closed the set with "I Will Always Love You," which we all know the Whitney Houston version and all of that, and she sang it with such sadness because it was part of her story. Like we all know the big bombastic and but it was just such this beautiful, like, almost just goosebumps, everywhere. It was so great. And
what's really interesting as well about that song is it's about her relationship, her business relationship with the guy who put her on his show as well. Like, I was just like, when I heard about that, I was like, isn't that hilarious that it's about a musical relationship.
Absolutely. And that happens. It happens a lot. Okay, so small story, like, again, going back to like the I Get Off thing.
Yeah.
I Get Off on You, Getting Off on Me was actually about the relationship with not necessarily even just the audience and me, because it kind of became that, and it also became sexual. Because why not? You got to put the sex in there somewhere.
It's lost.
So when we were making our first record, we're writing our first record. The producer that did our first record, Howard Benson, and then our new A&R guy had never actually seen us live, and so we were kind of like not showcasing, but we had a residency show at the Viper Room in LA.
Sick.
And so I remember talking about that later. I'm just like, I don't know, like when you can make two industry guys like stand up on their chairs that we had specially like reserved for them because they're industry folks, they have to have seats at the rock club, and when you can make them stand up on their chairs, that is like, it's sexual. It is. It's like, that is, you get off on that. So I remember saying that to the guys and then to a couple friends of mine that I had met later, these lovely young women, and I'm like, just like and then they're like, well, they were getting off on you, and I'm like, well, I got off on them getting off on me, and I'm like, I should write that down.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating, though. Yeah,
it wasn't originally about voyeurism or sex, even though sure, take it however you want. But yeah, it's funny how those things come into play. I remember thinking about that, like, oh, that must have been about like some ex-boyfriend, or like someone who's moved on, or she's breaking up with somebody, and
you got like, Dolly parallel. This Dolly parallel. I love this.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, I just music is so it's such a deep relationship.
It is. It's beyond the sounds and the people rocking out on stage and mosh pits and all. It goes beyond that. It's just so beautiful and intimate.
Yeah.
And that it is a journey and it is parallel, and we all feel it in a different way. And I try to talk about that with our fans, because it's not, it's like they can put me up on a pedestal if they want to and all of that. But it's like, really, it's like I feel the same thing from a rock show. I am a one-woman mosh pit when I go out. I go out in Nashville all the time. Well, obviously not as much.
I forgot the last 18 months. Yeah.
So in between tours, I would go out to these local clubs, and then just like I just want to rock out to some like local shows or whatever. And the clubs have gotten to know me quite well. I walk in, they're like, "Yeah, it is fine."
Here she is.
You have my tent out back. It's like I'll just stay for the tomorrow show.
Bring in the noise. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, we all feel the same things.
Yeah.
We all feel the same things both on and off stage, whether you work at McDonald's, whether you're, a millionaire, whether you are somebody like me that is fortunate enough to call her passion her career, whether you're 5 years old, whether you're 70 years old, it's like we all feel the same things. We feel the same feelings, and we get the same thing from music.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing that we all have this medium to be connected with.
It's quite profound.
So,
that was quite beautiful. I was like, thank you. You just wrote the mission statement for the show just then, and thank you. That was beautiful. That was quite, yeah, wow. Yeah, no, that's yeah, wow.
It's your embodiment. You're exuding it to me. I'm just lolly in the
It's good. It's good. It's a nice ass thing to share, isn't it? It's of all the things we can possibly share, and it's something that we haven't gotten to share for the last while. And I do hope that we're going to. I saw someone say this recently, and he's like, okay, we're about to have the best 5 years of live music that have ever happened. And I am hopeful. Look, we can only hope, right? That this is going to be the roaring 20s. It took a year to kick in. It's just going to be like, bam, bam. Yeah. I mean, are you guys playing Hellfest?
No, I think we're doing it the next year. We have other shows. It's crazy.
Sorry.
We're booked into 2023 right now, which is amazing.
That's
we're trying to predict the future is what's happening. But yeah, it's just like I'm looking at this schedule and I'm like, I don't even know how I'm going to react to my first show in front of people. Like I haven't had a show in front of like 5 people in a long time. It's been the longest I've ever gone. And so I just want to like say to anybody listening, just if I get a little emotional about being on stage with all you guys, just give me a moment.
When is your first show back?
Technically, we just ended up. We're about to announce it, but we just ended up booking. We're gonna do a warm-up show, at a local club here. It's gonna be like punk rock Halestorm. Like we haven't played this capacity show in probably over a decade, so it'll be fun. And also we realized that it could kind of backfire because now we know all of our friends are going to come out and be like, that's a terrible first show. You don't want all your friends sitting there judging you, like the people that have like spent a night on your couch. Like that's what a stupid idea.
Busting them in again.
So
all over again.
It's yet to be announced, but we're going to do that as a warm-up show because I didn't really want to go from like there to festival to arena. I didn't want to go from living room to arena. Even though I think it would be totally fine. But then after that we have we have the Moondance Festival, we have the River Riot, we have a small run, just festival season coming up, and then we have small headlining show, and then we have we're going out with Evanescence in November, and that'll be from November through December, and so that's going to be amazing. And we got a whole lot of surprises in store for everybody with that because the girls are back.
The girls are back in town. Yeah, lock up your sons, as the saying. Lock up your sons. I dare you to call it. You're not going to call it that. It's fine. Like
you know what? I'm okay with calling it whatever.
I'm glad to hear it's back and like,
yeah.
Right, well, it's not back here. We're back in lockdown because our country is ridiculous, but that's a nice time.
You never know. Now there's all these new variants and stuff that we
mental.
Keep
yeah.
I'm like, please, just everybody figure it out because
20 or at least
coming up. Yeah.
2022, we might be allowed out again, because we've been granted. But that's so be it. We're here. We miss you guys. We miss American rock and roll. But you will be back. Believe.
We're coming.
We've got to believe. Yeah. So, well, cool. Well, thank you. Thanks, Lzzy. It's been really cool to explore your.
And we'll definitely be seeing Europe very soon.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
at least we're booking it in the hopes and prospects that we come. But so
it's looking very hopeful.
Yes.
As As Wayne once said, if you book them, or in fact, Jim Morrison in Wayne's World 2, if you book them, they will come. So on that note, thanks very much, Lzzy. This is Revolver's Fan First podcast. This is Lzzy Hale of Halestorm. Hope you enjoyed the show.